Hello and welcome to The Router, the official podcast of the UQ Computing Society, where we explore the human side of tech. I'm your host, Rachel Cheong. My pronouns are she, her. Today we are speaking with Graham Cummins, who is the General Manager at KJR. KJR is one of UQCS's silver sponsors this year with over 25 years of experience in tech consulting, software testing, and IT solutions. They provide services like software quality and assurance to DevOps for a range of industries across both public and private sectors in Australia. Apart from that, Graham is also involved as a Queensland Council member for the Australian Information Industry Association and has had a very fun and exciting journey through the world of tech. So thank you for joining us today, Graham.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rachel.
So good, yeah. So may I ask, just to begin with, what does KJR stand for?
Sure.
Where does the name come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So KJR, originally known as KJ Ross and Associates for the first 15 years or so of our existence, is actually the acronym for our founder's name, Kelvin John Ross, who started the company in his garage on the Gold Coast.
Wow,
and, which is pretty cool, that classic sort of startup story. And so for the first number of years, Kelvin actually had, a team of people working out of his property there on the Gold Coast, but we've since expanded across Australia to have offices across the eastern seaboard.
Wow, that's awesome. I guess that's the classic startup sort of setup, as you said before. So that's really awesome. So how did you find yourself at KJR? What was your journey? What did you study? Where did you work beforehand?
Yeah, so I think my story is quite varied in terms of the career background because I started out in telecommunications. So here in Brisbane, working for companies like Pipe Networks, who were heavy in the infrastructure and cloud kind of space. And then I had a break in my career from Brisbane, moving over to Canada, where I moved into more telecommunications, but more in that software sort of world with a company called Mitel as a channel partner manager there, working across sort of major telecommunications vendors in the US and Canada. And then, but coming back to Brisbane, really in the sort of the mid-2000s, it was really that sort of space where you could see software was really starting to change the way businesses were working and operating. And so I really wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah, of course.
So I worked with a local company called Tech One in the enterprise software space.
Yeah.
And then after that, joined KJR.
Lovely. No, that's really exciting. Yeah. And you've joined as a general manager as well. So Correct. What sort of, led your journey into that sort of space? Yeah,
look, I think, for me, as I mentioned, I was fascinated by the way that, the importance of software implementations being successful for businesses.
Yeah.
And, here in Queensland, some of your courses, I think, actually mention some of the ones that go wrong. So we won't name any names, but we all know who we're talking about. So for me, that was that sort of, passion about seeing software change in the world, basically.
Yeah.
And, that journey just continues as we sort of move into things like AI and, the importance of that and cybersecurity in today's world. So for me, the journey just hasn't stopped. It's just continued to be that passion about making sure that software projects run well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess, as we start to develop a lot more stuff and, software gets being more heavily implemented, it's very important to make sure we're implementing good software that isn't just crashing on us every minute or so.
Exactly.
So that is awesome. Yeah. So any new ideas or concepts in tech that spark your interest as of recently?
Yeah, well, I mean, touching on, where we just mentioned, I think a lot of people in the community have a lot of concerns about things like, the cybersecurity threats that we've seen, about the potential for AI to replace people's jobs as well.
Oh, the classic.
The classics, right? So, looking at that, I think some of the new ideas that are coming out in those spaces, especially things like AI and healthcare, are really quite promising. So I'm a incorrigible optimist and I really see a bright future and the fact that technology is really helping in some of those areas. So some of the things I've noticed recently, so with KJR, I'm lucky enough to go to a few conferences as well, as most of our consultants get to do, which is really important to stay across that. So there was a digital healthcare conference at the Brisbane Convention Centre recently, and I saw that West Moreton Health Region is actually working with Philips to provide a messaging app for people to support them, from a mental health perspective. So
interesting, yeah.
Things like that where, previously people may have only had a couple of hours access to their practitioners, and now they can access that service sort of when and where they need it the most. Through to other projects that we've worked on recently, where we've been providing digital dashboards and analytics to some of the primary healthcare hospitals, so that doctors are actually able to see, the active status of patients, reacting to things quite quickly, as we saw during the COVID pandemic.
Of course. Yes.
And, then actually using some of that data for real life analysis, using that real world evidence to actually generate life-saving medical research. So
that's it,
some of these things, the list goes on, but some of these things happening in the healthcare space I think are very, very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially as you mentioned, like especially in healthcare where things change so quickly, and just being able to, I guess, identify when an issue comes much quicker, or being able to provide additional support through technology is really important and really awesome. And so really awesome you're excited about that, because it is a very exciting space. And of course, from there, is there anything you can talk about from KJR's perspective as to what you guys are doing in that space as well?
Yeah, so I'll give a shout out to one of our clients. I'm sure they won't mind. Doctors on Demand is another client that comes to mind. So those guys, as it sounds, provide medical services 24 hours a day.
Awesome.
Using the app and using the latest technology that's available. So we've been obviously working with them to make sure that their software is humming and working really well. It's a demanding user base that we have today. We want things to work really well. We expect a good user experience, but also a good, response time when we use an app. So that's where, I think that's a really exciting space that we've been involved in as well.
Awesome. That sounds awesome to us. What's something that you have been working on, Graham, that you can tell us about, some really cool projects that you've been working on at KJR? Yeah,
for sure. I think one of the cool things about KJR is, first of all, how varied the domains are that we work in. So, we are working in everything from kind of, transport and logistics through to working with some of the electoral commissions here in Australia to make sure the voting in our democracy is working well.
We sure hope so.
That's right. And reliably. We also work with some of the federal government departments who actually are responsible for making those payments, during COVID and the student payments and things like that, which kind of ramped up really quickly, during that time when there were different types of payments that became available.
Yes.
And obviously having the ability to give those out accurately and in a timely fashion was of utmost criticality. So that was our job. And we had people working really hard and long hours during that period to make sure that those payments were coming out, when promised and to be correct with all the calculations and things like that as well.
Awesome.
So that's some cool examples. Some of the other things we have been doing. So corporate social responsibility is huge for us as well.
Of course.
So giving a special mention to some of the projects we've been working on up in Cape York as well. So there's one called the Yalangee Rock Art Project, where we are working with Indigenous rangers and working to identify those assets, which are multiple thousands of years old rock art that's been identified in the area, and actually helping the traditional custodians to rediscover, locate, and then document those assets using modern technology.
That's really cool. Actually, speaking of your corporate social responsibility arm, I guess, what would you say that's your favorite CSR activity, or is there something else that KJR has done that you're like, wow, we're really helping in this space?
Yeah, I think that's a really cool one. We do a range of things with Indigenous. We are running a high school program to help Indigenous kids, I guess, unlock that potential of a career in tech and giving them that exposure to some of the experts that work at KJR and partnering with the Queensland government. We've been delivering that for the last 12 months or so locally here in Queensland, which is cool. But also we run datathons on a regular basis as well, and that might be of interest to some of your students actually.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, that's it. So recently we were involved in a healthcare datathon in Brisbane, partnering with some of our other sister companies, if you will, IntelliHQ and Datawi. And that was really exciting, bringing together medical doctors, data scientists, software engineers, and solving some of those big ticket challenges that, hard nuts to crack in the medical industry.
Yeah.
And just to see those minds come together and really solve problems in that speed within, 24, 48 hours and then come out and have a tangible product to pitch is really exciting to see.
That's really awesome. And especially with technology, right? Like really enabling the fast pace, I guess how do we say it? With technology enabling like the fast tracking of a lot of these sort of solutions for a lot of problems in the healthcare space. Really awesome.
That's exactly right. And, part of the challenges there in the healthcare space are using the assets that we have.
That's it, yeah.
And, healthcare and biomed is a big opportunity for us here in Australia. So it's definitely an opportunity of focus for people within the technology industry. So
for sure, yeah.
Cool to know, right? Because it's, often, hey, I'm in IT, but you don't often sort of then think about what are the applications of IT and how you can actually support some of these industries like healthcare or, perhaps Indigenous folks in regional areas as well.
Exactly, yeah, I know. That's really awesome. Technology is just so useful in so many different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess moving on from here, for I guess more of our viewers around who are in the computing space, what does the role of a consultant involve? What does a typical day look like for a consultant?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, and as you alluded to, Rachel, KJR is quite diverse in terms of the focus that we have, both from the industries and the technology. So our business is primarily an assurance consulting firm, and that means that we are helping organisations do what they do better in the tech space. But whether it be focusing on software quality assurance or kind of, the merging of software and hardware in that DevOps space, ensuring that the software is performing well and the infrastructure there, whether it's cloud-based or hybrid, is there to actually support the software we're running and running really quickly so we can deliver the software more quickly as well, through to actually focusing a bit more on the data side, which, obviously is very important with AI, to provide the right tools and tech around that space, because you can't do any AI projects unless your data is sorted and clean.
True, yes.
Yeah, so that's quite diverse. So I guess coming back to your original question, what does the day in the life look like? Well, it can be a lot of different areas, and also the domains we work in, as I've alluded to as well. It's quite diverse as well. What I love to see is people who sort of get involved in a business like KJR and then have the opportunity to actually try out some of these different kind of areas.
Yeah.
And what you'll often find is if you get 3 people in a room who started with us in our graduate consulting program, they'll give you 3 different areas that are their favourites. So, that's nice to kind of see people discovering that passion.
Yeah.
And then able to identify where they're going to be effective and actually enjoy their job and their career and want to continue working in, right?
That's awesome. So I guess from there, does KJR really give a lot of flexibility for students to sort of move around within the business and try different areas? Or
Yeah, we really do. And so, as I mentioned, we're only in Australia, which means we've got offices down south as well, though. So down in ACT and Victoria and Melbourne, Gold Coast, Brisbane. So there's always that opportunity to kind of work across borders, and whether you want to geographically move or just work remotely, that's all on the table, of course.
Awesome.
These days.
Yeah, that's true.
But we also have a pretty good little grad program as well. And so we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure, actually. So of course with grad programs, I'm sure a lot of our students would love to know where they could potentially fit in KJR. So tell me more about these grad programs. What should grads be expecting at KJR?
Yeah, okay. Look, I think as we've touched on, it's quite diverse. But the nice thing about what KJR does is we're setting people up to succeed in their careers. So what that means is that we actually work with some of our sister companies that are based right here in Queensland who do deliver products, whether it be in the healthcare space, which is a company called Datawi, or our other sister company, which is called Smart AI Connect, who work in the computer vision space with AI-enabled cameras and IoT devices.
Awesome, yeah.
What we're able to do with our grad program is to give people opportunities to work across these different domains.
Okay.
And because these organisations are doing everything because they're startups and scale-ups. People just have that chance to, wear many hats.
Yeah, awesome.
Which is a little different, to when you go into that large enterprise space and you really kind of get, you're almost the cog in the wheel sometimes.
Yeah.
So what we find is that this works really, really well, and people get a chance to try their hand at different areas and different parts of the tech ecosystem, and then it becomes pretty clear which parts they're passionate about, as I alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
And we're able to then sort of take that and actually provide that training to get them to that level of being a consultant, moving them into some of our enterprise clients while still being mentored by our very senior and experienced consultants. So they're actually set up for success.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's always good to hear when companies do provide a lot of sort of mentorship and teaching for interns, or not interns, for grads, sorry.
Yeah, both.
For both, I guess. And that obviously really helps with career development and all that. So I guess from there, what do you guys look for when looking to hire your grads, or just in general?
Yeah, so great question. I mean, look, obviously, the classic things that students can do are, make sure that they're getting out and attending events and, joining ACS, or, having side projects and being able to put those things on your CV, but also being able to talk to potential prospective employees about that as well, because that's the passion side, right, where you kind of stand out and we can see that this person actually has a bit of an interest in technology, or they're starting to formulate some of those ideas about the areas that they might be more successful in. So those are some of the things that we really look for.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I guess leading on from there, what do you wish you could have heard from someone in your position when you started at university?
Great question. Well, I think, it almost sounds cliche, but we've talked a lot about it today, and it is about finding your passion.
Yeah.
And, for me, that's definitely happened in my career, which has been amazing. But for me, that opportunity to, get into an organisation where you can identify what you love. So whether it be volunteering, as I said, whether it be sort of going to ACS, but really thinking about what are the things you enjoyed at uni? Like, was it the group projects? Did you end up being the one who was doing all the development there, or are you the one who was kind of coordinating, the outcomes and project managing people almost, right? Think about those kinds of things, about, what you did and what you loved. And you don't have to have all the answers about what your career is going to be, because none of us know, but give yourself a chance just to get out and try different things. And then, really, once you sort of identify that, pull the thread and don't be afraid to go after what you're looking for. I have people come to me and, sometimes people just want the job, right? And I get it. But I think there's a certain level of honesty that prospective employers appreciate. And I think that's something that you owe to yourself.
That's it, yeah, because you wouldn't want to be stuck in a job that you pretended to like, and then next minute you realize, no, I didn't like this all along.
No, stuck in the matrix.
That's it, stuck in the matrix. Yeah. So for a lot of students looking for internships and grad positions, corporate culture is obviously a very important part, making sure you're working for a company that you also really enjoy being a part of and the work you're doing is good. So how would you describe the corporate culture at KJR?
Great question. So as I mentioned, we've been around for quite a while. What I think makes KJR really unique in this space is that, unlike many of the companies that would have started 25 years ago, we haven't been bought out by a big global tech company.
Yes.
So, there are a couple of tangible differences that delivers. So, number one is we're really able to maintain that sort of company culture, and that small, almost family-like feel is what people often comment about when they work at KJR, the feeling that your employees will step in and really support you and mentor you.
Yeah.
Which is really, really important. And also, that corporate social responsibility aspect that we talked about, really being keen to not just throw some money at a sponsorship, but actually really genuinely care and get involved in helping out those communities where we work and live.
That's it. Get your hands dirty and get involved.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we term ourselves a collective. It's definitely not a cult, I promise you that. But, what it means is that it's a very flat management structure. People are put in a position to be supported and mentored. We put our money where our mouth is, so we certainly offer the training certifications and things like that, but they're not all just external as well. We actually run those training courses internally.
Awesome.
So we have study groups and they meet once a week, and then they sort of go off and do their homework, quote unquote, and, working through some of those gaps that you might have as an intern or a grad. Where do you need to be upskilled? So there's a lot of focus around those kinds of things, and we actually get together and have a lot of fun. We have an annual get-together where the whole company all flies down to the Gold Coast to get together for a 2-day off-site, and we have monthly kind of lunches where people actually get a 30-minute slot called Throwback Thursday, where they can actually share a bit about the customer project they've been working on, challenges, how they've got it around it, all those kinds of things. So there's always something going on at KJR amongst the collective, and we think that's of utmost importance. So you mentioned the word diversity there, which I think was interesting, and I touched on the fact that KJR has an offsite once a year where we all get together and we're able to kind of share ideas, do some hands-on learning, but at the same time, there's a lot of fun involved as well. One of the cool things that we do have happening is a best dressed competition, and we make it a little bit competitive between the states, where each region, comes to willing to win the trophy with the best dressed. What we like to do is to throw a little bit of that spice of diversity in there as well. So with the recent conference that we had, we did a flash mob. So more than just a fancy dress.
Gee, wow, that's very involved.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some training involved and a lot of commitment, but we have, so we have people from different nationalities, and one of the nationalities there had Indian background, and she actually is a dance coach as well.
Oh, wow.
So what we did was give people the opportunity to kind of learn some of that Bollywood traditional Indian style dance. And what that did was then kind of, people opened up to sharing their culture a lot more, and it was a lot of fun at the conference as well. So next year people have, I know, a lot more different things like that they're cooking up and looking to take that trophy back from us.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. Yeah, because obviously in Australia, we are a very multicultural country. So really awesome to see that you guys are definitely putting an effort to embrace all the different cultures that make up Australia as we know it.
Yep. Super important.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I guess building on from that, so how many people work for KJR at the moment?
There's about 130 people in the business, and we've been growing steadily ever since the COVID pandemic in 2020, which was an interesting year for most businesses.
Of course.
I think a great statistic, just a great fact about that year for us was that we didn't have to make anybody redundant. There were nobody was let go.
That's awesome.
Really, the focus for us was just on supporting our employees and working through that period, which was a little challenging in some ways, but in many ways we came out so much stronger. And obviously with the working from home opportunities that it affords many of our people, I think that's been a nice boon for that sort of, talk about mental health and work-life balance and all of those types of things. So that's been a really nice thing that we've got that opportunity to do that as well now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, after COVID, being able to work flexibly has become very important for a lot of people and has made people really realize that, I don't need to be tied to my desk for work. I can still do a lot of things that I want to do and still, maintain a very good work-life balance. So that's really awesome that KJR is able to support that as well.
100%.
So as a young person wanting to grow and build their career through KJR, so I guess what does a career progression sort of pathway look like in KJR? Is it sort of linear, or is there lots of different ways to be able to move around?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of the university graduates, that first step is to come into that graduate program.
Yep.
And identify, as we talked about, kind of what are those areas that you really want to focus on. From there, the opportunity is to move into the consulting space, which can sound a little intimidating, I think, for people in that position as a student, because they say to me, hang on, I don't know everything. How can I be a consultant? And, the answer really is that in a position to be successful because you've got mentors, and we're actually taking, the pretty significant foundational skills that you have learned here at UQ and other universities, and actually providing that next level of support to get you up to the training that you need. So in terms of sort of painting a career pathway, typically you're learning a lot in the first few years. So it's really just, no matter what you're doing as a consultant with KJR, there's lots to learn, and you're going to move up through that progression space pretty quickly. And as I alluded to earlier, for us, it's less about seniority or titles or those types of things. And it's really more about what is that passion, and how can you then start to focus and build upon that to just keep kicking more and more goals in your career. Because it's the same thing anywhere. The person who, puts their hand up and just keeps doing a great job and asking for more responsibility is the one who will continue to get more responsibility. So the career progression can be quite quick. And especially when you're working with people who are quite seasoned, that's a really nice mix that we find with the smart young grads with some people that are quite experienced. It's a potent cocktail for success.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess lots of different perspectives and ideas always foster some great solutions for things. That's awesome. Yeah. Something that's a little bit more closer to what a grad would potentially see in the consulting space. What does a technical consultant actually do at KJR?
Sure. So one example I might give is one of the recent consultants who joined our team at a TransLink, which is a subsidiary of Transport and Main Roads, and I'm sure everybody here knows it when they take the ferry to UQ or take the bus or the train. So, what that specific role looked like was coming in and joining an agile squad or a team where you had people that were business analysts, people that were software developers, people that were designers on that side as well. And for us as a quality assurance consultant, what it looks like is actually ensuring that the way the software is being delivered is fit for purpose, and that's quite a varied role. So in that specific role, this consultant was looking at things like automating their test automation through to creating new elements around automation as well. So really quite creative kind of thinking that was required, but at the same time, as I mentioned, being part of that squad. So communication, turning up to that daily scrum ceremony, learning a lot of those kind of business etiquettes around communication, and at the same time being supported by a senior KJR consultant in that space. So it was a lot to learn for that individual. They were very, very successful, but I think some of the keys to success were their ability just to think outside of the box, and if they had an issue, to communicate very effectively early, not waiting 3 or 4 days to say, hey, I've got a problem I can't solve. So in summary, it's really about finding something that works for you, but at the same time being strong in the communication area.
Awesome, yeah. So being able to build those communication skills would be extremely important in the consulting role then.
100%, yeah.
And that's it for today. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Router. Thanks, Graham, for joining us. It was absolutely wonderful learning about KJR, what you guys do, what you do personally, and what it means to be a consultant and a grad in the KJR space. Join us online in our Discord server at discord.uqcs.org to keep updated on all things UQCS. We'll see you guys on the next episode.